Inspired by the life of the savvy and ambitious Colombian businesswoman Griselda Blanco comes a new Netflix original limited series. Griselda tells the story of a devoted mother who, with her lethal blend of charm and relentless savagery, creates one of the most powerful cartels in history. Witness Sofia Vergara's captivating transformation into the godmother of the underworld. Griselda, now streaming only on Netflix.
We're here to entertain you. We'll sing your songs for good times, the best times. You can't go wrong. We'll two-step, a new step. It won't be long when the Dixielanders are playing. Soon you'll be swaying, so come on, sing along.
Mes dames und herren, mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, I give you the international, sensational podcast, Before My Time, with your host, me, Gelsey Laurie. Welcome and bienvenue, welcome to the podcast about cabaret. We're talking about cabaret. Let's talk cabaret.
TIAA is on a mission. Why? Because 54% of Black Americans don't have enough savings to retire. So in collaboration with big-name artists like Wyclef Jean, TIAA released Paper Right. New music inspiring a new financial future. With 100% of streaming sales going to a nonprofit that teaches students how to invest. Stream Paper Right now and help close the gap.
If you like music and you like podcasts and you like to laugh and you like to learn, you need to immediately subscribe to One Hit Thunder. Each week on the One Hit Thunder podcast, we dive deep into the story and back catalog of a one-hit wonder band or artist. From there, we have a good, healthy discussion as to whether they brought the one-hit thunder or were nothing more than a one-hit wonder. We have a huge back catalog, and we've done episodes on everything from Don't Worry, Be Happy and the Macarena to King of Wishful Thinking and Cumbersome. I promise you're going to love the show more than Jaquan loved getting tipsy, and even more than Bobby Boris Pickett loved making alternate versions of the Monster Mash. Subscribe to One Hit Thunder wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, Gelsey, I know that I was the one that suggested that we do Cabaret when you had said, let's talk about a movie, because we haven't talked about a movie in a while. But I think I was also the one that put it on the long list because
You did.
love the music of Cabaret so much.
It's so good.
And also, it's weirdly, like, we talk about, like, the Gelsey Matt origin stories of, like, our friendship and how our friendship developed. And a big part of it was the very first podcast you ever did was my favorite episode of, and you picked a Schitt's Creek episode during the season when they're casting Cabaret. And I was excited you picked the episode you did because it was the Little Bit Alexis episode, which is like...
I know, I'm just obsessed with that. I sang it this week, so it's fine.
But there's a part of me that was like, I was like so bummed because I'm like, oh, but like of that season, that's probably the funniest episode, but the final episode of that season where they do the performance of Cabaret is like... I
cried.
The emotional peak of that whole series.
It is. Yeah, and not to go off on a Schitt's Creek tangent, because we already have done a full episode on... Go check out my episode on my favorite episode of. Schitt's Creek is such an amazing show, and it's obviously hilarious, but what I love that they did in the later seasons, which I really look for in comedic shows, be it Scrubs, I'm rewatching Ted Lasso now, is that these really funny shows that can get you to cry.
Yeah.
And they pull at your emotional, you know, and everyone's like, oh, they're funny. And I'm like, no, they do a really good job, though, at that deep. And the Cabaret episode for sure was one of those where I was like, this is actually like hilarious, but it's so incredible what they did. And
we're going to talk about the song maybe this time later on in this episode, but Stevie's performance in that episode might actually be my favorite it might be my favorite performance of that song because it chokes me up so much.
Yeah. And ladies and gentlemen, if you've never seen Schitt's Creek, don't just go watch that episode. You'll be like, the actual fuck. Like, it's one of those things you need to know the whole backstory and get to love these characters, and then that's why, you know, you get emotional because you're just I've been on her journey with her.
Yeah, you've been on Stevie's journey up until that moment, because both the movie and this, we'll break it down a little bit more, but that song is such a that's probably my favorite song in the whole show.
Okay, don't get ahead of yourself, Matt. Let's start talking about the movie.
Let's start talking about the movie. Yeah. I mean, the quick thing is that it was a play first, right? This was a stage show first, or
yes, it was a stage show first. It was a 1966 musical, but actually, the 1966 Broadway musical was based off of first a play. 1951 called I Am a Camera, which was based off of a novel called The Berlin Stories, written in 1945. So initially, this story is loosely true. These are all characters based on true people. Jean Ross was the real Sally Bowles.
Okay.
So it is loosely based on a true story. Obviously, things get translated through them the play, and then they kind of adapted it to a musical. So the story did kind of shift a bit. The man who Michael York plays, he plays the character of Brian Roberts, who is bisexual in the film. In the original story, he is homosexual. And so there's like things like that, and it's kind of his view and whatnot. So yes, it was a very successful show on Broadway. Joel Grey, who in the film plays the MC, but he actually originated the role of the MC on the Broadway cast. And I was watching this really long interview with him. What a fantastic... He's a comedian first, but comedian, actor, because when you watch these interviews of him speaking, he's nothing like the MC. And he talks about where he got his inspiration for that character. And it was some cheap comedy show he saw one time when he was getting into comedy. And he thought, this guy's using every trick in the book, and this is the shittiest thing I've ever seen. He's lousy. Everyone's laughing because he's pulling, is cheap. And so when he went into workshop the role, there was no character for the MC. He was given 4 songs, and that's kind of it. And so he had nothing to pull from, and he kind of had to create this character. And he said one run they were getting ready for the run of Willkommen. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to try it. I'm going to try that guy that I just think is the worst. And he did it, and the director pulled him aside, and he goes, that's it.
Yeah.
That's him. But he's nothing like that when you watch him speak. He's just the most endearing, and you're like, wow, it's incredible to see him transform. He did originate the role, and he also was talking in an interview how, they didn't know how the audience was going to receive it and whatnot. And so he said they did the first number, and they start with the dun, 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 which is just already gives you chills. Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome. And he said they finished that number, and they got a standing applause. A standing ovation after the first number. And he said they kind of stopped for 5 minutes and didn't know. They're like, do we do it again? Do we what do we do? And they continued on with the show. And it became an instant success. Like, people just loved it. The music's amazing, like we said. And so 1972 comes around, and the film gets made. The producer was Cy Feuer, was already on it, and he'd kind of already cast it, and he chose Bob Fosse to direct it. Some of the other producers in the studios didn't want Bob Fosse. For those of you who don't know who Bob Fosse is, in famous Gelsey words, jump off a bridge. No, Bob Fosse, we definitely will do an episode on him. I was obsessed with him as a child. When I moved to New York, I intensely studied him and was mentored under a woman who was an original Fosse dancer. But he is a famous choreographer. He gives us jazz hands. He gives us the good bowler hat with a teacup, Rich Man's Frug. He choreographed Chicago, Pippin, Sweet Charity, Pajama Game, I'm blanking on Taming of the Shrew, Cabaret, the movie, Liza with a Z, incredible person. And he grew up in vaudeville and was an amazing dancer himself. And then his legacy kind of goes down into his choreography, but he had just started moving into the film industry. He'd been very successful on stage, and he'd choreographed a lot of films and was very successful with the choreography of them. That being, he was in quite a few, but then My Sister Eileen, The Pajama Game, Damn Yankees, he had already choreographed all of those. And those all, did very well. So then he goes on to direct and create Sweet Charity, and it did not do well, which I was surprised to read that. I didn't realize that Sweet Charity didn't do well, because now it is a classic. 1969 Shirley MacLaine classic. And that gives you great hits as Hey Big Spender, for those of you who don't know. So no one really wanted him. He had just done a flop, and so they're like, really, Fosse? So Feuer, the producer, fought for him and was like, no, this is a musical, and he knows musicals, and he's going to have a different eye and vision for it. So Fosse came in and did it. And he very much, someone said that he came into that producer meeting, cigarette famous, Fosse had a whole look, always a cigarette, and came in and said, what do you want? instead, and he's like, I kind of having to win them over. And they're like, well, we want you to direct this movie. Okay, great. Goes off. And so everyone that worked with him was just like, he had a vision. He didn't really like stray. He didn't like improvisation. He knows exactly what he wants, and everything's to account. Everything's to a T. He's an artist. He's a genius. I may say so. So we already did have the cast. Liza Minnelli was already cast as Sally Bowles. Michael York, I do believe, was a Fosse once he came on, was cast as Brian Roberts. And it's funny, the casting that went out for that role of Brian Roberts was descripted as a Michael York type. And so Michael York talks about like, well, I talked to my agent and like was like, well, shouldn't I go for this? And he still had to audition, even though they legitimately like that's the breakdown.
I feel like I hear stories about that all the time, though. It
does happen, and that just shows you how weird Hollywood is. And it's, ugh. Well, and that actually kind of happens a lot when, and I think we're seeing a resurgence, or at least in the last decade, of movies being made that are musicals and very successful and whatnot. And a lot of the films are not bringing in original cast members from the Broadway shows. Some do. I know that I think it was Jersey Boys.
But then we had the Dear Evan Hansen situation where it's like, I love Ben Platt. I love Ben Platt, but he can't be playing a 17-year-old in a feature film.
I know nothing about Dear Evan Hansen. I didn't even give it a chance. I'm so like out of touch with Broadway, which it's my roots, so I'm a little sad, but I like the classics, which is why we're doing Cabaret. But Bob Fosse felt the same about this film. He actually didn't want Joel Grey. He was shopping around other people and he didn't want him. They kind of already had this tension building. And Joel Grey talks about this in an interview. He's like, I think he was thinking maybe they would get in a situation where they can find no one and Fosse would do it himself. And again, he is a great performer, but the producer basically said, it's Joel Grey or you walk. They were pretty set on him for a very good reason.
Yeah,
I mean,
he shines in every single scene that he's in.
He is the epitome of this movie, as like the wrap it into one character, kind of holding it on, of this zany, covering up, dark, twisted. It's great what he does.
Well, you're talking about the dark and twistedness of this. It is. I remember the first time I watched this, I didn't know what it was, and I didn't like it.
Oh, yeah. I was too young, so it's a very serious, slow, dark film.
Yeah. Like, I was in high school, and there's a punk band that does all cover songs, and they put out an all-Broadway cover album, and it ends with them doing
I feel like you mentioned this, because you're like, there was this one rock band that didn't, it's always a punk cover.
Yeah, they did a punk cover of the Cabaret song, so I liked that. And then I love the Jason Biggs movie Loser, and in a scene they go to see Cabaret, and you see it's Alan Cumming at the time was playing the MC.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that Alan Cumming did do a revival of it, and he's a perfect. I'm such a big Alan Cumming fan.
But they show him doing Vilkeman, and I was like, "What is this show?" So my friend lent me their DVD to watch, and I didn't know if it was like supposed to be like scary, funny. Like I had no clue what I was watching beyond that. I knew it was a musical, and I think I barely paid attention to it the first time, but then years later I rewatched it and was like, this is incredible. But it has these weird creepy moments. The ending of the movie, the way that Cabaret kind of falls into this like noise. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, why?
It's at the time, I mean, it's a social piece of 1931 Berlin, which we can do a quick.
It does. It juggles a lot of tone in a lot, like, because it is both a dark drama. It does have the horrific history that's happening behind the scenes, but it's also got a bit of a love story to it. It does have really funny parts in it. Like, Liza Minnelli's charming as hell every single time that she's on the screen. Like, it really juggles a lot of. You can go through so many different emotions just while watching this 2-hour movie.
Yeah, which I'll give you a 2-sentence synopsis that I didn't write, so I'm not taking credit, but I'm lazy. In Berlin in 1931, American cabaret singer Sally Bowles meets British academic Brian Roberts, who is finishing his university studies. Despite Brian's confusion over his sexuality, the pair become lovers, but the arrival of the wealthy and decadent playboy Maximilian von Huhn complicates matters for them both. The love triangle plays out against the rise of the Nazi Party and the collapse of the Weimar Republic. So it is set at the tone. You get really caught up in this weird, eerie kind of fun playhouse of a cabaret and the nightclub seedy scene and the fun of it and the not taking it serious and joking about the Nazis and joking. And they do a really awesome job. And Fosse did a really beautiful job, I think, of this, of the harsh contrast of girls in fishnets kicking and the MC screwing around and everyone's laughing and acting like everything's fine, and then showing clips of someone being beaten to death by Nazis or the body lying in the ground, and it's kind of this hum, and they're like, the Nazis are just these things, we'll take them down, it's no big deal. And there's that scene where there's the body in the street and Liza, and they're all walking past, and they're now with their playboys, so have all this money to throw around and just partying and just talking about the frivolous, stupid stuff in life as they walk past this horrific scene.
Yeah.
And that contrast of it really is quite powerful. And the scene of the cabaret, and it is, like I said, it's almost like this underground hell cabaret feel. You can smell it when you watch it. And it's
songs, like they're performing some like really fucking weird songs.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get through. We will talk about almost every one of them, but yeah, we need to go through that song list. But I will say, before we do, just a little bit more about the movie. Speaking of his success, the show did great. The movie had a fantastic success. It did incredible at the 1973 Oscars. It had 8 wins, including Best Actress for Liza Minnelli, Best Director Bob Fosse, Best Supporting Actor Joel Grey, Best Cinematography, Best Art Direction, Best Sound, Best Film Editing, and Best Music/Original Song. This holds the record for the most amount of wins for one movie without taking Best Picture of the Year. And that is because they were up against The Godfather, and The Godfather won that year, which I'm going to say I'm not a huge Godfather fan. No, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you.
Okay, everyone's always like, what? And I've watched it so many times, not so many, but like as an adult, and I'm just like, I get it, but not for me.
I don't do well with most mob movies in general. They're just not for me, and The Godfather's even slower than most normal mob movies, so it's like
I do some like Get Hot, so that's my mob movie.
That's about as mob movie as I
get.
get.
Oh my god, Joel Grey in a wig in the scene when he's dancing with all the girls and you don't know he's in it yet, and he comes out, he looks just like Jack Lemmon.
Yep, 100%. I mean, you and I have both kind of already played our hand on this, but I think this should have won. Best Picture.
I honestly think Cabaret should have been out The Godfather. Did we just lose like half of our listeners?
I'm sure we did, but I really truly believe that. Also, I mean, we should mention, beyond the fact that we're doing Cabaret because it's a great show, it's also 50-year anniversary this year. So like...
Is it really? Oh, I didn't... Oh, 72. Holy shit. It's 2022. Fuck. That kind of stuff like... I'm still like in that time warp of COVID where I'm like...
No, it's still 2019. What are you talking about?
I still think 2019 was like a week ago. And I'm like, wait, 2023, huh? Speaking of time warps, no. They did rehearsals and filming in West Germany. And Fosse would go. Willy Wonka was on the soundstage that they were supposed to be on next. And Willy Wonka kept running over. And so Fosse was known to go on the set of Willy Wonka and be like, fucking hurry up. Like, you're holding off my movie, which I loved. And it just shows. Joel Grey said the first time he went in to a rehearsal with Fosse, there was already that tension. He didn't want him. And he said, Joel, can you do a backflip? And he's like, well, I don't know. Show me. And he goes, okay. And he calls his assistant over and said he has his cigarette and this, that. And he goes to do a backflip and lands on his face. And this is Fosse, and just lies there. And he goes, it felt like an eternity. It's like maybe 5 minutes. The nurse came. He went away for the day. He goes, the next day he came back, cigarette. He said his face was black and blue. Nobody talked about it. You move on because it's like, Fosse was a very interesting character. And again, we will go into this in another episode with a deeper dive. But he did have that kind of stark, hard ass, like you didn't want to piss him off, but he's a genius. So sometimes that's where it comes from. And I think another reason Fosse was the perfect person, aside from his kind of more obscure choreography and visions that he had, but he grew up in burlesque. He was a young dancer, a young boy that would perform these tap numbers in burlesque clubs. And so he understands this seedy nightclub scene very well. And they said that in between takes, the makeup department would come by and dab off everyone's sweat, and they're trying to make it. And he'd say, stop. He's like, don't get rid of the sweat. He's like, leave it. I want it to look as authentic and, kind of falling apart as it can. And you can really see it. And there's one when they're doing the Three Ladies number, and one of the girls' wigs by the end, I was like, oh my God, her wig is like falling off. You can see her hairline, but it does give it that kind of cheap, undervalue vibe that it would have been.
It feels like one takes, even though that that it's cutting to different cameras. Like, it really feels like you're just watching a legitimate live performance and not like, and that's why it's weird because it's a musical, but it's that unique type of musical, right? Because there's the two different types of musicals. There's the people breaking out into song and dance musicals, and this one, unless I'm forgetting something, all of the songs are exclusively performed within the Kit Kat Club or are legitimately being sung on stage. It's not, we're not having these giant fantastical musical numbers.
Correct. Yeah, this is in that form where it's like all the songs are meant to be heard. You're watching in the film, they are being performed. It's not a classic musical where they kind of have the breakout singing a song and that's how what's actually kind of their thought process or or whatnot. And they have so many emotions, they can't do anything but sing kind of a vibe. Yeah. And originally Fosse he was trying to get away from musicals and wanted to get into more serious directing. And he didn't want to make this a musical, or he very much, the first cut of this, he wanted the musical numbers almost to be kind of echoed, like not actually show the full numbers. And Joel Grey talks about when he went to the first screening of it, the first cut they put together, he was really upset and really sad because he was cut from most of the movie. It was just, there would be like a 10-second little blurb of what's going on in the cabaret, more background noise as it almost is. He went to the producers, went to his agent and was like, I'm really upset. And they're like, don't worry, this is not how the movie's going to be. Which I'm glad, because the musical numbers are incredible. And I do think that contrast is what makes it so beautiful. But yeah, the film is really cool because it is all the songs except Tomorrow Belongs to Me, which is when they're out at that like outdoor kind of beer garden-y thing. And the young Nazis start singing it and they all start. But even that song is meant to be realistically being like, oh, he's singing a song, not we're breaking out into song. Huge difference. So yeah, it's not that kind of classic musical. It's a much more, I feel like it's a much more serious social piece that happens to have some songs.
No, I think that's fair. And I think we're getting near the point where we're going to start talking about these songs, because we've kind of covered the plot of it. But I do want to ask you, because there are some really quotable lines, especially from Sally. But do you have any lines from this movie that you always think about?
The only thing that I always think about, always, is when I was a kid, my best friend Megan and my sister, we would always sing Cabaret, as you do as a child. And they would always sing, when I'm gone, I'm going like Gelsey.
Of course you do.
And I'm always like, yes. And then I do like a big jazz. I'm like, ha ha. So I always can't not sing my name into it.
So the one line that I always think of is when Sally and Brian are having the huge fight and he says, screw Maximilian. And she says, I do. And then it gets real quiet and he goes, so do I. And that's like when you realize they are in like the truest of true love triangles. Like it is such a...
it is a throuple.
Oh my God. It is. But it is such a... In 7 words, it tells you so much information. Like, I think that is such a brilliant... And that's probably obviously from the original show, but like... That is some of the really good writing that I think is in this movie as well. It's just like there is the dialogue. It's not, I wouldn't say it's like a full blown screwball comedy in any sense of the word, but like Liza Minnelli brings a little bit of that screwball comedy energy when she's talking to people inside the boarding house. She's very frantic and
I wouldn't call her screwball at all. I know what you're trying to say, but I have to disagree there because that she has that very well, she obviously based her character, she did a lot of research and whatnot, and she studied Louise Brooks a lot from the 20s and 30s and kind of took off that energy. But she read that the woman that she was based off of did kind of wear these like bizarre, crazy outfits. It was just different and kind of, it's almost that really energy frantic, oh god, like that. You're just ignoring the reality. She's very much not in tune with
she has no clue
responsibilities.
Yeah,
reality. She's, her relationship with her father, she even kind of lies to herself about, and it's that kind of just making everything. She wants to be a movie star, and it's almost like in her head, she's creating the life that she wants to live and seeing it through the lens she chooses to ignore, by overly flaunting her sexual adventures, I guess I'm going to call them, and whatnot. And, especially in a time when it was not proper to talk about. And she's just like, what? Yeah, I screwed someone last night and this, that, and da, da, da. And it's like she wants that shock factor. And so she's over the top for that.
Yeah.
People to go, what? And the lashes and the...
She actually reminds me of Lorelai from Gilmore Girls in a weird way, as someone who just
I
loves
haven't watched Gilmore Girls.
But I'm like looking at
Yeah.
like some of her quotes on IMDb. They have like the quotes page and stuff like, "Doesn't my body drive you wild with desire?" Or,
I do love that when she doesn't my body just drive you wild with desire. And I was like, what a thing to say. I would never say that.
I know. She says, "Where's another one? I'm going to be a great movie star. That is, if the booze and the sex don't get to me first." And then obviously when Brian says, "You're an American," she goes, "Oh God, how depressing. You're meant to think that I'm an international woman of mystery. I'm working on it like mad." Like she just, you're right. She's in this. She has created this fantasy life for herself to really separate herself from what's happening.
And the sadness of her own life and the fact that her father doesn't show up and isn't there for her and doesn't really love her, and she's holding on to this dream that I think she knows in reality won't happen, and she's kind of going to be stuck as this third-rate cabaret singer in Berlin, and I think that kind of plays when she's sitting and thinking about actually having this baby, and she kind of flashes of all the different scenes of her singing and this, that, and what she wants, and I think that's the moment that she's like, oh, this happy life that we were talking about in Oxford where we could raise this baby together in England. She's just like, that's not possible for me because I don't get to have the happy thing. I know deep down that I'm stuck here.
No, it's a sad movie, but man, does it have some happy tunes. So let's talk about some of these.
Well, we talked a little bit about Willkommen, but what a great, just iconic. You hear again that first doom, 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 and it just sets the tone. You know exactly. You're just like Cabaret, yeah.
It's all escalation. It's 7 minutes of just escalation to like that final chorus where everybody is. It's a dangerous song for me to listen to in my car because like the hand starts going. Like you're just like, welcome.
They're gonna say you start speeding. I have songs that are on do not playlists in my car. Freebird by Leonard Skinner being one of them. I am not allowed to listen.
You're being chased by the cops when Freebird comes
I
on.
have very dangerous. I actually got into a bad car accident listening to that song. So my bad. I had my Jenny from Forrest Gump moment. It's fine. I own it. Yeah, Willkommen. And I love the introduction of the girls and I love their makeup. And it is this dark, over dramatic sense, and the costumes, which they're sexy, but they're kind of like, where the hell did you get that? And they're almost not, like their makeup almost makes them look ugly.
Yeah.
You can tell they're beautiful women. And I really love that. And they have the same makeup that Joel Grey almost does. And so it's like when he puts on a wig in their women's costumes, you don't spot him out because they all have that look. It's just,
they weirdly look like, this is a weird comparison, but like visually it makes me think of like the Tim Burton Batman movies. Like I think of like the women who have been like Joker-fied, or even like the circus clowns in the sewers and like Batman Returns. Like it's just this weird, or even, there's no way that there wasn't at least a little bit of a visual cue that they later pulled in for Rocky Horror Picture Show. Cause it is that like, it's gorgeous, but it's like this almost dead, like the makeup is just slightly smeared or just a little too much, where like it's off-putting but like still kind of sexy simultaneously. Like it's a very strange look that all of them have.
Absolutely. 1,000%. Yeah. And it's great. And the choreography is great too. I love, even as a dancer, there's a simple moment in Willkommen when they kind of step kick. They're kind of doing like a walking kick line, and the girls have this like slight bend in their knee. It's not a perfect rocketti or can. It's this kind of just slightly broken, dingy version of it. And it really emphasizes the feeling you're supposed to get through the choreography of this seedy nightclub or 1931 Berlin, the shit that's going on. It just, even through the movement, you capture that. And that's why Fosse is a genius.
Then we go into Liza's first song.
Yeah, which is the first song we have that is not in the original Broadway show. This was written for the movie.
Okay.
And I love Mein Herr. Like, it is absolutely... So when I first rented this movie, I was probably like in my preteen years. I'm going to say maybe 12, maybe 11 even. And I couldn't make it through the movie. It was very boring to me. but I was obsessed with Fosse and all his choreography, and I just wanted to learn anything I could. And so it was still VCR. I must have watched Mein Herr 100 million times, and I pulled my desk chair and I sat, pause, rewind, play, and learned the entire number that the girls on the sides are doing with my chair. And like my mom walked by and I'm like draped on a chair, like walking my feet in air, like 5, 6, 7, 8, like just trying to, I loved, it's funny. I was watching it and I was like, oh my God, I like know these moves. And like the choreography like came back as I watched.
Oh, that's
great.
And
I was like, oh, I forgot. I just spent so much time in my room alone learning this number. And it's one song I love to sing in my car, but it does come at the cost. A lot of these songs replaced, a lot of the songs from the Broadway show didn't make it in, but the ones for the movie did replace somewhat versions of it. And it does replace one of my favorite songs in the stage show, and that's Don't Tell Mama. And it's, hush up, don't tell mama, shush up, don't tell mama, whatever you do. And it's basically, it starts off and she talks, mama thinks I'm living in a convent, just a seclusive little convent in the southern side of France. Mama doesn't even have an inkling that I'm working in a nightclub in a pair of frilly pants. So please, sir, if you run into my mother. And it's this whole, shush up, don't tell mama, like cute. And it basically has the same vibe of all the girls with Mein Herr. And it doesn't have the same kind of, Fosse choreography because he didn't have anything to do with that version. So you get a very different vibe there as well. But I do love that. And I had a recording. I'm going to pause real quick and kind of go to this. There's a lot of famous actresses who played Sally Bowles on either Broadway or the West End. Judi Dench being one of them. Ooh. She played it in her younger years on the West End. And then I had the recording of Natasha Richardson, who is best known to play the mother in the Lindsay Lohan Parent Trap. And I absolutely adore her. So I had her version. R.I.P. Natasha, love you. Terry Hatcher played her, Molly Ringwald, Brooke Shields. They all had to go in Cabaret. I had to Google some of them. I was like, Terry Hatcher, Cabaret. I was like, I don't believe it. And I was like, holy shit, she's so young. But yeah, I had the Natasha Richardson recording of it. And so that's that. Is it already Goda? Maybe This Time is next?
Yeah, so I got to talk about Maybe This Time because this is one that probably, I won't say I cry every time I hear the song, but I get moved every time I hear the song. I do too. And it's definitely, like the first half is great, but it's starting right at that everybody loves a winner, so nobody loves me.
Nobody loves me.
And then, the way that Liza hits that last part, though, with the like, it's gonna happen sometime.
And she couldn't have her head any more tilted back with her mouth just straight up to the ceiling. Like she has that open mouth. Yeah, it is. You really feel it. And I love where it comes in on the film where it's like she's just starting to actually have this romance with Brian.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And she actually is
chilling.
Like,
it's
yeah, it is.
But so here's the funny thing, and I wonder if this is the same for you, because in this movie, it's a love song, or it's a hopeful love song. For me, it's always a career song. For me, it's like a career opportunity song. Like I know that's not what it's written about, but when
no. Oh, I interpret songs to be personal to me all the time. There's songs that are like
this is one of those songs where it's like when I'm working really hard on a project and I think that this could be the one, like that is literally the song I put on.
I only have one song like that for my career, and it's me sitting working and I'm like, God, I hope I get it. I hope I get it. How many people does he need? Which, have you seen, side tangent, have you seen the Will Ferrell movie Land of the Lost?
Once. I'll have to rewatch
Oh my God. And he has like his device, his time travel device is attached to the soundtrack of Chorus Line, so that song is just constantly playing. And when he has to go over like the lava, he like ties up his shirt and does a whole Chorus Line thing. I was in tears. I loved that movie. Chorus Line's great.
So again, I know you don't watch Gilmore Girls. You've never seen Gilmore Girls.
I do not.
But no. Kelly Bishop is one of the stars of it. And the podcast that I listen to, they always talk about like Kelly Bishop, queen of Chorus Line. Like that is like literally how they refer to her every time they mention her, is just like the absolute queen from Chorus Line. So I'm like, and I know so many of the songs, so I know that I would love it, but I just haven't gotten around to it. So that and All That Jazz are both ones I need to actually sit down.
Oh my God, you've never seen All That Jazz? No. So around this time that I'm dancing on my chair to Mein Herr, I had All That Jazz, and I owned that. And this was my deep dive at a very young age into Fosse, where I was just like, I need everything now, jazz hands all the time. And that's why I was so geeked out when I did move to New York. And one of my mentors was in an original 70s production of Dancin' with Fosse, and she had stories with him. And I was like, I can't believe my life. I can't believe this is real. But All That Jazz, I had learned all the choreography from that movie, and some of it's so I mean, they're taking their clothes off, they're naked, and I'm like, great, I gotta learn this. And I knew it all. And then I went over to Cabaret, learned mine hair, and but All That Jazz, Roy Scheider is the actor that plays Joe Gideon and All That Jazz. But it's basically like almost a self-autobiographical film that Fosse did, reflecting his own life.
Okay.
And it's interesting that he actually saw it this way, that he wasn't like shitting himself. He's like, yeah, I'm kind of a jackass. I'm taking uppers, I'm taking downers, I'm a bitch to my dancers, but I create good shit. And like, he was just so brutally like almost honest about himself. And he dies in the end of the film. And then shortly after, he did die of a heart attack. And so, but one of my all-time favorite numbers, I would recommend just even Googling or YouTubing this. Like, you don't really have to know too much about it. I would recommend the whole movie, but the very last number, he does that kind of into his death. It's like these big musical numbers that are him going through the phases of death. And so you're seeing him do with reality, and then he just sees everything through a production because he's this choreographer. And him and Ben Vereen do this performance of Bye Bye Life.
Okay.
And you have Anne Ranking and another dancer on the other side in these kind of like body suits with like veins doing really cool shit. And I've never seen two performers give the performance that Ben Vereen and Roy Scheider give on this. Right, and he's laying on the piano, and I think I'm gonna, bye bye.
I'm making this this
amazing.
This will be watched.
And he has all the audience, it's like people in his life, and it's this beautiful, like, oh, it's incredible. I'm getting chills just thinking about it. And I'm so grateful that I was exposed to this at such a young age.
See, I didn't have a family that, like, my grandfather liked this type of stuff, but he still died before I was really that interested and invested in musicals. Mm-hmm. So it was a lot of the stuff that I ended up loving in life was in the sadness of losing my grandfather, trying to like understand him better through the things that he loved. And Cabaret was like one of those things, I think, a little bit, because I love. But let's so maybe this time, I mean, we could
real quick. I just wanted to one more All That Jazz just to sell it more. I forgot Jessica Lange is in it, a very young Jessica Lange.
I already saw when I checked on IMDb.
yeah. I was like, that's right, I forgot, because I knew her. That's how I knew her first. But anyways,
we have to reference Schitt's Creek again on this next one, though. Money. Oh my God, possibly the hardest. I know you're a big Little Bit Alexis fan, but when they walk in on them having the independent choreographer teaching them the money dance, it is one of the absolute, it's both hilarious and very impressive. Like, the choreography is so impressive.
It's funny because when it's like that tough choreography and you're just stressing so much because you're like, this is impossible. And like, you feel, I've done so many gigs and contracts where choreographers will walk in and just be like, this is it. And you're just like, what the actual no. Oh God, cruise ship contracts. There was one that I literally, like, I know these guys were just doing like bumps of coke and taking speed. And they're like, here's your dance. And we were like, this is impossible. Oh God. We cried a lot, but then months later when we thought about it, we laughed a lot. So, but we were not laughing learning that. I do love though. And that's another, I'm a huge, Stevie fan on Schitt's Creek, who is played none other than...
You got to get her on the show one time. We talk about her so much. We got to be like, Stevie, do you like anything from the past? Come and talk
Emily Hampshire. I was blanking on her name. Emily Hampshire. My post-concussion brain does that sometimes where it's like, names? Watch this. I follow her on Instagram too. That's why I was like, I know her name, but whatever. She's great, but Money is another one that was not in the show. This was written for the movie, and it replaces a Money song. There is a song that the MC sings, and it's my father needs money, my mother needs money, my sister needs money, da da. It's like, but me, I'm sitting pretty. I've got all the money I need, and it's that. And so they replace that with Money, which was a good call, because some of the songs I'm like, oh, these are great, but Money Makes the World Go Round is just
Money makes
obviously
the world
classic,
go round,
iconic,
the
but
world go round.
the choreography and their way they play it, very vaudeville. It's throwing the coins into their pants and shaking it. It's brilliant. I love it.
It's such a. I mean, there isn't a song that I actually I'll play that card right now. There's not a song I dislike in this entire musical, at least in
That's
the
true.
film soundtrack.
I did. Speaking of money, Joel Grey was talking about the costume he wore for that Fosse liked to, even in rehearsal, see everything full costume just so he can like vision it and stuff. And the tailcoats they had him in for that number was actually an authentic costume from a much earlier decade in Germany. And he goes, he jokes that Liza was dancing with 50 other people because he's like, the hygiene wasn't that good. And basically the costume reeked of all the sweat of the men that wore it before and danced.
Oof.
And so doing that, I was like, oh, but he's like, I think it kind of played into the benefit of the tension of that number and the kind of
Joel seems like a real glass half full kind of guy.
You should honestly, I highly recommend watching even just like 10 minutes of his interview. I sat while I was doing something else and played like his 2-hour interview at the Y92, and he went off on other things in his career, and I was like, I love this man. It's him now. He's older, and I was like, I just want to hang out with him.
Yeah, you gotta find that Muppet Show episode. It's on Disney Plus for sure, but he is so charming throughout that whole episode. And I think it's charming to watch because I think he's literally like the second or third guest they ever had. So no one knew what the show was. And he just, it is a really good episode, but yeah, I remember that's what really made me start to love Joel Grey, was seeing him in that, because I'd only ever known him for this. Also, like, him and Sutton Foster did Anything Goes, which is my favorite musical bar none. So like, I listened to that soundtrack a ton. So I was like, okay, guy can sing. Like, man can sing.
I mean,
all right. So you mentioned this one already once before, but let's talk about it a little bit. Diddly-dee-dee.
Two ladies, two ladies, and I'm the only man. I love this number. I used to sing it as a kid, which it's fine. It was catchy.
It is.
They like it.
It is a very catchy song. Joel Grey gets the weirdest songs in this, because there's one more that we will talk about near the end.
It's actually his favorite. He loves that song. He thinks it's
such a weird
I do too.
But all right,
it's great. Anyways, yeah. So Two Ladies is about a menage a trois. It's a fun, zany. Again, this is kind of her wig's fallen off, but I forget what's going on during that in the film that it's kind of paralleling.
I think at that point, have they already found out that they're in a throuple? Not that like the two ladies would connect with that, but
I think it's later.
I just watched this last night, and now like
I know I watched it yesterday, and now I'm like, great. I'm glad my brain can.
That's all right. Look, I don't have a concussion, and I also forget what this was tying into in the movie, because when it goes to the Kit Kat Club, it is like a whole other world. Like, I know that the songs do connect to what's happening in the plot sometimes, but in my brain, I'm just like, oh, we're taking a break from the serious stuff to enjoy the crazy stage show down at the Kit Kat Club. Then we have an instrumental track on the soundtrack, and then, as you said, Tomorrow Belongs to Me is kind of the only like not in the Kit Kat Club performance in the whole movie.
Yeah, and there are a bunch of songs. There's actually a whole other love story that is in the stage production with Fräulein Schneider, who runs a boarding house, and her love interest is Herr Schultz, a German grocer. And it's like they have a doomed romance plot with the Gentile falling in love with a Jew during the rise of the Nazis, but that kind of gets replaced with the love story we get in the film between Natalia and what's his name, the gigolo, who's like, I am the Jew, and she's like, let's get married, and I was like, shit. It's actually very sad. And speaking of that, though, Marissa Berenson, who plays Natalia, who's the really rich Jewish woman that the gigolo is courting, and she's taking English lessons from Brian Roberts, and that's kind of how she plays into it. But she has that very innocent she's crying to Sally when she gets jumped and has had sex, and she's like, I was screaming, but then I liked it, and she's very confused and whatnot. But Fosse used to like harass her on set and like come up to her right before takes and whisper real gruesome sexual things to her in her ear to make her really uncomfortable and bashful. And then the scene when she opens the door and her dog is dead on the front step, I guess Fosse actually put like real animal guts on set to like spook her right before she opened the door, and so she was just so like, I mean, I guess it worked. She gave a great performance, but I was like, Bob, that's like it's a little low, Bob.
He's the method actor of directing at that point where you're just like,
he wants what he wants. That's something about him. Like, he will do whatever it takes to get what he wants. But woof, that was rough.
I don't remember this next one, Tiller Girls.
I think that's the one that he's dressed up like a girl. Yeah, the Tiller Girls is when they're dressed up and then they change their hats to kind of like German army and march off.
Yes, I do remember this. Okay,
which is a very short song,
so that's probably why I don't.
It's short, but this was an extreme like. I think this might be where the guy's getting beat up, or they see that. I know there's like I should have written these down. What's going on during that moment, but that's a huge contrasting moment where it's like clearly the rise of the Nazi party is happening, even though people aren't really taking it seriously because they're like, nah, that's not going to be a thing. But and they're just kind of taking the piss out of it. And obviously us as viewers know it's about to be a very real thing.
Yeah.
And so seeing that kind of like joking, laughing, sexy, like ignoring to the climate of like, oh, fuck. I thought it was a great number.
Yeah. Okay.
And Joel Grey is great. I loved seeing him dressed up and looking like Jack Lemmon.
Okay, that is the Jack Lemmon scene. That's how I'm going to remember it forever now, is the scene where he kind of looks like Jack Lemmon.
He looks just like him. I was like, holy shit. But the next song is the one you were talking about, If You Could See Her, where the MC sings with the gorilla. And this, I don't know why I love this number so much. I think it's so funny that it just turns around the gorilla and is just eating a banana. And that's, kind of like, also the point of it is like, it's this, everyone's laughing, and there's a lot of a vaudeville style of performing in this club. But it is, I like how the club also is ignoring, making fun of what's going on outside, but they're also, it's that kind of political comedy.
Yeah.
Where, at the end where he's like, says, what's the line? If she wouldn't look Jewish at all.
Yeah.
Which in the stage show, they don't do that. The line is, she wouldn't be Mishkeit at all. And there's a song called Mishkeit in the stage show that was cut from the movie, and it's Mishkeit, Mishkeit, once upon a time there was a Mishkeit, and Mishkeit is ugly in Yiddish.
Yeah.
And so then in that one, he's like, she wouldn't look Mishkeit at all.
Then we get the big closing number, the title track, if you could call it that when it's in a musical. But Cabaret, I mean, what a song to send us home on.
What a great song. And what I love about this version is the kind of like sad tone almost.
Yeah.
Like there's almost this like, when she starts the song, it has, you can feel that sadness and that hopelessness almost. You think about Cabaret and it's just like, what good is sitting alone, all happy, but I don't know. For me, that's what I take from it, that I was like, I never really viewed this as a more like kind of dark, cynical, we're happy, we're fine, just come in here and don't worry about what's out there, continuing to lean into ignoring the world's problem, ignoring your own problems, ignoring reality, ignoring your own sadness.
Yeah. Well,
and just drinking and partying instead.
If you even analyze the performance, I think that Sally goes through stuff throughout the song. Because I think that where we leave off in the movie is, like you said, she realizes she can't have this baby in Oxford. Like, that's not what her life is supposed to be. So it starts off with that very slow, sad, what good is sitting alone in your room? But like you said, I'm going like Gelsey. Like, it's almost like she takes this moment of, as fucked up as it is, she's like, if that's the way I'm going out, like I'm going out guns a-blazing that way. Like,
yeah. And it's really that like pivotal, like she already was living this lifestyle, but kind of like, I'm living this way. And and it's a sad story about my friend Elsie, who used to live down in Gelsey. Ding, ding, ding. It kind of has that cue, but it's talking about when she dies. And
when she was laid up like the queen, she was the happiest corpse they'd ever seen. I think of Elsie to this very day. and remember how she turned to me to say,
"What good is sitting alone in your room?" It is that great. And it is the build of when I go, and you can hear that just fuck it.
well, I don't think I ever realized that that's what that last chorus is. Start by admitting that from cradle to tomb isn't that long a stay. Wow.
It's dark. It's people think it's just fun. I'm like, it's a heavy song.
That is a really heavy lyric. But I mean, at the same time, that's like 1972's YOLO. Like, she's like,
life is a cabaret. I'm gonna start saying now, and people are like, "Whoa, you're gonna go? You're having some wine tonight? Don't you have an early spin class to teach?" Life is a cabaret, old chum, and just exit the room. Fuck it, I'm doing it.
Fosse on your way out.
Oh yeah, I'm going like Gelsey.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say.
I've been saying it a long time. So is my friend. I just don't need to die.
No, we're not done. Look, we're not done what we came here to do, Gelsey.
We've got a lot of topics and episodes to cover still. So
exactly.
Hey, do you have an idea for a podcast but don't know where to start? Or do you have an already existing podcast that you want to take to the next level? Well, check out WeKnowPodcasting.com. From concept development to theme music to editing to logos, WeKnowPodcasting.com is a one-stop shop for all things pod. Don't hesitate to hit us up. We're very nice.
You know, we did a really long episode, so I don't really have a big question. I was going to say, what's your favorite song in the show? But I think we kind of covered that, didn't we?
No, we actually did not.
Okay, then what is your favorite song in the show?
Shit, I can't. I don't know if I can pick. I love Mine Hair. I really do.
Fair. It is a good song.
I feel like I just relate, and I'm like, you have to understand the way I am, Mine Hair. And I'm like, yes, it's me. But I also love. I was gonna say Willkommen. Like, I really love that song.
I would say that for me, it falls solidly on what I'm in the mood for, and if I'm in the mood for the big vibration, it's gonna be Willkommen, and if it's just something that's going to put me in my feels, it's going to be maybe This Time. Like, it's usually between those two. But I mean, it is such a good show.
It really is. And actually, we want to know what your favorite song is, or favorite song that didn't make it into the movie from the stage show. Please let us know on Instagram at BeforeMyTime_podcast, or on Facebook. Just search Before My Time. We will pop up. And while you're here, if you wouldn't mind just giving us some stars, possibly 5, and a really cute review, that means a lot to us. It helps us get to more listeners like yourself that love things that happened before our time. Thanks again for tuning in, and see you next time. Bye.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.